I am Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Editorial Director of Brand Insider at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Nishtha Jain, and she is the Head of Innovation and Digital Technology at Takeda. Hey, Nishtha, how are you?
Hi, Lisa. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And it's a little dreary for me today. I'm in New York, so it's a little rainy, but other than that, all good. And I'm so happy to meet you. My colleague was like, "She's awesome. You have to, interview her for this." So I'm glad we were able to make it work.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And same on my side. So I'm in Boston, so it's a very typical Boston day with a lot of rain and overcast. So I know we had some issues trying to get the lighting here, but yeah. Other than that, I'm really excited to meet with you and dive into our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. And I know Boston well since I'm from there originally, and my parents are still there, so
Great.
still family there. But and as you said, let's just dive right in. And I first want to congratulate you. I know that you recently received an award for excellence in healthcare from Health 2.0. So that's awesome. Congratulations on that. And I saw, as I do my snooping, which I always say, you had a speech, and in it you talked about being an immigrant and your journey. And you also, I want to make sure I get it correctly. You went on to say that innovation, that it wasn't just about technology, but it's about people, perseverance, and the courage to challenge what's possible. So I want to hear about, you mentioned your, as an immigrant, your journey. So I want to hear about that journey and what possibilities did you sort of challenge yourself? Where were you getting that courage to then move forward as you really came here to the States and just set yourself up?
Yeah, Lisa. So first of all, thank you. So where I want to start with is firstly receiving the Excellence in Healthcare Award was deeply meaningful for me, not just professionally but personally as well. Because again, my journey did not started in a boardroom. It started as an immigrant into a new country with a very different accent when I moved here. Barely, again, any money to spend, very budgeted life, and I was on student loans. And then the main thing was uncertainty about future. So I immigrated to United States in 2011 from India, New Delhi, to pursue a master's degree at Georgetown University. I had a deep belief in myself, and that possibility isn't something we have to wait for. It is something you have to create. Again, back then I always heard about this term called American dream. So the possibility I challenged back in the day was this idea of American dream, and whether this country will provide me with opportunities to grow in my career and where it will take me. And this is something for anyone who's immigrating into a US. It is a very, very long path to green card and then becoming the citizen. So initially in my career, all the choices I made were driven by the US visa, whether a particular job that will give me visa or not, or whether I could continue staying and working here. So pretty much that's what drove me. And initially I also had to pay the student loans off, so every career move was dependent on visa. I um, I I did not have all the answers back then, but what I relied on was resilience, curiosity, and my unshakable belief in myself that that's what I continued challenging.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting that you say initially, because you saw the possibilities and you had that in your head, but you needed to get through certain things, maybe do things in a sense that weren't, take positions or move forward in ways that might not have been your initial choice, but you knew you needed to do that in order to get to what you saw down the line for yourself. And I think that's, something really valid to say whether you're an immigrant just coming to the States or anyone just trying to get from one position to the next, there are certain things you need to do that maybe aren't on your bucket list, but at the same point, it's going to get you to the next step. What would you say is, like, so having to deal with that kind of issues obviously was a huge challenge for you, but what else aside from, I mean, as you said, new country, a language that you weren't, it's not your first language. So all of these things, and then just integrating yourself into customs. Like, talk about, I guess, what the biggest challenge of all of that, or maybe there's something I haven't even said that really impacted you as you were moving forward early on.
Yeah, so again, initially my challenge was pretty much trying to figure out, which employers would sponsor my visa, where I could, find a job. So again, I had a purpose in mind and I had a passion, but then all the decisions or all the like path that was charting me was more dependent on how, this visa thing is going to work out. So again, I think that's something that I have had. So there have been a lot of challenges, and as we'll talk today, you'll hear more about, various aspects and various areas I face those challenges. But just coming to where I'm today, again, most recently, I've been challenging a different kind of possibility, one we usually rarely talk about. And it's essentially this challenge around the illusion that hyperconnectivity is equal to human connection. So again, we live in a world which is always online, yet many of us are feeling lonelier than ever. So again, that's what has led me to work on digital well-being, and I'm actually going to be speaking at an upcoming TED Talk, and then I'm going to be reframing tech not just as tool for efficiency, but as something that must protect our minds and hearts too. So as you can see, I mean, I'll be talking about all the different challenges that I face, but this is the challenge that I feel that everybody's facing. And I am actually trying to like feel challenged by this at the moment. And whether it's through healthcare, leadership, or social platforms, all I always keep asking is, what if we challenge not just what we build, but why, we are building these tools and technologies?
Yeah, well, and as you said, I mean, it is something that we are more connected than ever, but as you said, we are also, or many of us are also lonelier than ever. And I think because in one way you feel disconnected because this is not the same as meeting in person and
Yes.
really being able to connect that way. And also, I think it's a little bit of the FOMO situation, or not even, or you just feel like you're missing out because everyone else online seems like they have a perfect life or whatever they're doing, and we know that that's not always the case. So when you talk about, so let's, with your TED Talk, when you get into that, and I don't want to get into the work per se, just because as I always say, this is all about you, not the
Yeah.
work. But what is the hardest thing for you to deal with these challenges of maybe feeling that, disconnection or FOMO or whatever the above may be because of digital being so online? What are you trying to do personally to sort of get past that?
So yeah, so again, when I talk about FOMO, I mean all of us experience it in one form or the other. And essentially, I'm glad that you asked about this. So again, I have a personal FOMO story, which again I'll save for the TED Talk. But what I would say is that I have been able to move myself from that FOMO place to a JOMO place, which is like the joy of missing out by being trying to be more mindful, trying to be more present, where I am recently. And what I want to share is because of this TED Talk, I had to say no to many conferences, speaking opportunities, again, which are full of incredible speaker and industry leaders. So my first instinct was, when I get these invitations, is, oh, I have to be there, I want to go, I want to meet these folks. But when I really tune in and like look in myself and ask, I realize that saying yes to these opportunities would mean saying no to rest, saying no to the time that I could spend with family, or the headspace that I need to sort of prepare the TED Talk, because I'm pretty much spending my weekends right now doing that. So I declined, and surprisingly, I felt relief. So I do think again, I so this is my and that's why I started to frame this TED Talk around this topic, as I think everybody can relate to it. But yeah, but essentially, that's what my talk would be centering around, that how can we move that?
Right. Well, it sounds like it's
Yeah.
about choices. And you made certain choices and it's obviously working for you and what you're doing now to not only prepare but also give you that time to rest or be with your family. I'm curious in terms of, being in pharma, being, in tech, all of that. Was that something, because you came to the States obviously with a purpose. Was that instilled in you early on, or did you come here and then as you moved forward, like about your path to where you started, what you were looking to do when you were first, just graduating or whatever, and then to where you are today.
Sure, sure. So, growing up in India, my dream was very much sort of, I would say, I did not dream too much of what I want to become. It was pretty much eclipsed by a singular goal of becoming a doctor, which is an inspiration that was passed on to me by my well meaning parents. Of course, all Indian parents want their kids to be doctors. So, that's the first thing, you would hear any Indian kid you would talk to, doctor or engineer or lawyer. So these are the three choices. But, I think in my family, it was only that singular dream. But because of that, my parents instilled in me love for science. I mean, particularly biosciences. And then, curiosity for solving health problems for people. So I think that was something that was instilled in me from very get go, that I have to use science. I have to figure out a way to use science to help people. And since internet was just taking over when I grew up back in 1990s, even though again I couldn't become the doctor because of very few seats and very competitive landscape in India. So think of, for 200 seats there are approximately millions of kids who are
Right.
appearing for those exams. So
With
even though I
parents like yours.
Yes, yes. So even though, I couldn't become a doctor, my passion for science and the vision at the time that together science and this new thing, which is and technology, could be the future, of every of our existence. So that fueled me to choose biotechnology as a career. And again, I did an engineering in biotechnology. Then I moved to States, pursued masters in biotechnology. So what it did is it opened a world for me where I could figure out different ways of intersecting science, technology, but then also people. Because, when you create different tools, you want to keep your user and people in mind as well. So initially, again, as I shared, it was mostly about survival, trying to find the role that would sponsor my visa. So my early career choices, I mostly spent time in medium size and small size companies, where I took my actually first role was in marketing research. So marketing research, data and analytics, and business analysis. And it was not until I worked for an EMR company, and the name of the company is Doctor First. So that's when I actually realized that it's not just doctors who are changing lives of people. It's the entire, ecosystem, entire care team. So, if doctors need the right tools and technologies, they need the right medicine, resources, at the right time to be able to treat a patient. And that's when I decided that I wanted to, help. Perhaps it wouldn't be through stethoscope and through, the actual that path, but through innovation in digital technology, and through tools, and where I could leverage data and insights that would empower healthcare professionals and protect patients. So literally, it was after that I eventually, once I had this clarity that this is what I want to do, I was able to find a role in a pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, so GSK, which is a, big British company. And then I became part of this health ecosystem, ensuring, we are delivering the right medications and vaccines to the patients. So again, and in at GSK, I actually had an amazing opportunity to work across the value chain in R&D, in medical affairs, in commercial, and in both the pharma and vaccines business. So hence, I had stayed in pharma and biotech since then. So, but that was my pivotal point. And as you know, then I moved to Biogen, and now finally I'm at Takeda, and I actually like love doing what I do right now. I help solve complex business problems that impact patients' lives, public health in general, using digital technologies and innovation based approaches, which is, like design thinking or human based thinking. So, ensuring that these medicines get delivered to patients safely and faster. So,
Right.
in short, I think I'm sort of accomplishing the mission, which initially was to become a doctor, but in a very different way by being in that ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, as you said, there are other ways. There are different ways to provide that kind of help and to people, whether it be online through pharmaceuticals, through being an actual doctor or nurse or whatever it may be. This was your path. And I'm curious because I mean, pharma itself has tended to be a little bit more in the, male dominated field as well as technology. And obviously that's changing. You're proof of that. But I'm curious in terms of the challenges as a woman, or say a woman even starting out today. And I think that there's differences, but they're gonna have some barriers. What advice would you give to that young woman just starting out that wants to be you?
Yeah, so I think again, one of my biggest challenges, again, that just wasn't being a woman in male-dominated industry, but it it was being a woman who chose to lead differently. So again, not being loud, not being harsh, but leading through empathy, emotional intelligence, and clarity. So early on, again, that was it was mistaken for softness. So I have been through those situations. Again, but then what I had to do was to learn to trust my perspective. That again, it wasn't, it was essential to be true to who I am, to lead authentically, and essentially, not only not be afraid, like basically so what I did is again, I and I'll come to the advice part. So again, what I tried to do was I joined certain organizations that were supporting women leadership, and they promote gender parity. So I took a board role at an organization called as HPA, which is Healthcare Women Association, and then I'm also member of community called Chief, which is essentially, these communities are there to amplify the underrepresented voices, and again, learn into that something called human first innovation. So again, today I mentor a lot of emerging female leaders, and what I always tell them is not just to rise, but to rise authentically. And this is an advice that I always give, is that don't only limit yourself to your jobs, but actually take up a leadership or a volunteering role in such communities. And again, if you don't want to look outside of your work, there are also employee resource group within a company that you can sort of just take the role at and just say, I want to help out with the event. So what that would do is, taking these roles, leadership roles, as volunteering helps you test your leadership skills to try to see, because even suppose you're not operating at that level today, you can operate at that level in a leadership role at an employee resource group, without any high stakes, and actually see for yourself what are your strengths. So that's again one advice I gave. Now again, for someone trying to follow my path, I would also believe, so this is something I truly believe in, that we don't attract who we are or what we want. No, so we don't attract what we want, but we attract who we are. So essentially, what's not inside of us, or not what we don't want, we are not going to attract. So what we need to do is, we only will not get the opportunities that we don't seek. So we have to one has to push themselves out of their comfort zone, and again, take these stretch opportunities either in employee resource organizations, or say within different teams within your company. And sometimes it could also mean moving places, so moving away from your home country, moving to a different state. And I think taking such roles will put you in places and situations where again, a lot of growth will come from. So again, I tend to stay like true to the advice that I have myself followed. So I would say, that's something I always share. And Additionally, Lisa, what I want to add is something where it's something we all are seeing, that our technologies are evolving at an extremely rapid pace. So again, for us to stay relevant in our current roles, we have to, there is no option but to be a lifelong student. So I mean, I don't think it's a choice at this point, but we really need to reskill ourselves and upskills ourselves continuously, because now, and this is as per a survey, I think at least every 2 years we are becoming redundant. So this is, another piece of advice, that we need to stay curious and continue to be like that lifelong student to attract those opportunities.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously, especially when you're talking in the technology, in the digital world for a career, but even when you're not, I
Yes.
think that for anyone, I know there were times that I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that, I don't do, but it's like, I've come up against it, and I feel, oh, I got to learn this. And it's just, instead of getting to that point, it's better just to stay on top of it and keep up with those things as much as, even if you don't necessarily think you're ever going to need it. It's kind of like when we were kids and say, why I'll never use math, like it's just these are all the same kind of thing. So I completely agree with that. I'm curious, what do people when they first meet you, what do they get wrong about you?
Yeah, so I'm usually warm, and mostly a people's person, and I like certainly love exploring, meeting new people, and exploring their perspectives. But I'm a direct communicator, so I usually say what I mean. I move with purpose. I don't try to waste, a lot of, again, time in some things that are not gonna go anywhere. So that can sometimes come off a little bit as intimidating, especially in industries where indirectness is not a norm. So again, I have been in my career in different teams where I was very direct, trying to get things done, but then I think it wasn't like my directness wasn't that appreciated, because what I later on learned is that people like are mostly indirect. All the people on my team were indirect communicators, and then I had to adjust myself to that. But again, so this is the first impression sometimes I get, but then often people tell me that once they know who I am, they can see the empathy behind the directness. And again, I lead with heart just as much as I try to lead with the strategy. So again, once we get past that first impression, people usually say that they feel like it's so refreshingly honest and real, that you are real, you are authentic. And yeah, so again, I think but I also, when I reflect upon this characteristics, sometimes, I mean, again, being direct isn't being harsh. It's sort of being very clear, and trying to build the trust faster. So again, I have also seen exact opposite situations where being direct has helped me build the trust faster, build that respect and clarity faster. So yeah, so again, I think it's a very interesting question, but yeah, I mean, people have perceptions, we have perceptions of everyone we meet. So it's an interesting one to try to balance out directness with warmness.
Well, and I think directness, especially when you're talking in a leadership role, but even in general, people ultimately appreciate it if it's done in a more, like, as you said, doing it genuinely or warm, or like it's, like if you yell at someone, and I'm not saying you did, I'm just
Yes.
saying, like, there's ways to be direct, and
Yeah.
there's ways to do it in a way that is trying to be helpful as opposed to telling someone they're wrong or bad or whatever. So, and I think that comes in tone as well, which we all learn as we progress,
Yeah.
okay, they took it a little the wrong way. And also read your company, like each person can be handled differently. I mean, I know I definitely have people who can have much stronger, they can take whatever, and then others we have to be a little bit kid gloves. So I'm sure that comes into play as well. So I
Yeah.
want to just go to fun. Like, just what's your guilty pleasure?
Yeah, so I mean, again, if you talk about food, then I love dark chocolates, but I usually, again, I really enjoy long walks on the beaches. So as soon as there is like this like we get good weather in Boston, which is above 60s. I tend to spend my weekends pretty much, either walking on a beach or spending the day there. But I also like traveling a lot. So, as the weather improves, I also try to make travel plans and
Mhm.
just, go to a new place. Sometimes not like just plan the flights, but then not plan the exact day. So just go to a new place, just stay there and explore, how the day is coming.
Wow, okay, that's
Yeah.
good. So just
Yeah.
enjoy yourself. That's fun. I mean, and
Yeah.
I like the idea that you don't necessarily make a plan, because I'm sure most of your life is with plans. In
Yes.
terms of your career, you seem very like, okay, you gotta have this,
Yeah.
this, this to get to this. So maybe it's nice to just sort of throw that all out and just explore.
Agree. Yeah. And that's why because the weekdays are so much, pretty much planned fully, I try to keep my weekend as minimal plans as possible. Even sometimes, you have personal appointments. I try to be like, oh, why are they calling this appointment? Because
Yeah.
it shouldn't be.
It's just to be, I'm going to show up. So,
Yeah.
okay. I think it's very cool. You saw Oprah Winfrey speak,
Yeah.
and you talked about that. Well, you posted about that, and I want to quote Oprah correctly. I don't want to make
Yeah.
mistake that. She had said that trust that inner voice, listen to that inner voice. It's part of your own rising. So, and this is something that you obviously it touched you, it made an impact on you, which is why then you posted and shared that. So I'm curious, was there a time for you where you didn't maybe trust that inner voice or listen to that inner voice? And what were the results? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So again, just to summarize that, I recently had a amazing opportunity to be able to watch Oprah Winfrey live speaking on a stage at a Massachusetts conference for women. Again, I was able to take like a far off selfie, which I thought would be possibly way off me. Like that's possibly something, like I don't know if I'm ever gonna meet her again, but it was in my bucket list. So definitely, when I saw her, that was a moment. So Oprah said, when she said, trust your inner voice, it's part of your own rising. It hit me hard because, first, I mean, the reason for that is that I've not always been the person who has listened to, inner voice of mine. And again, years ago, I have taken role that really did not align with my greater purpose. So, there was something inside me that always kept saying that's not your path. But, I kept ignoring it. And again, Lisa, I shared some of the journey where being an immigrant, there were sort of times where I had taken roles just to ensure, my immigration status would be there and not necessarily those roles align with my bigger purpose. So again, 6 months into that role that I'm just talking about, I was completely burnt out. I was disconnected. I was feeling like I was performing at a version of myself that's not truly me. Again, it wasn't a bad job. I just feel like it wasn't the right alignment. And again, that taught me something that, when your inner voice speaks to you softly, don't wait until it starts to scream. So again, try to be more connected and hear to that. And again, do I regret taking that role when I look back? No, not anymore. Because again, I learned a lot in that role because clearly it was something that was not, it was completely out of my comfort zone. So I learned a lot. But it gave me clarity. It taught me that I have to stop outsourcing sort of this thing about approval or a validation where I have to ask someone whether this is a right role for me or not, but have to trust the inner voice. So what would I do differently today? Again, I would listen sooner, trust the rising. And then rising doesn't always mean climbing up. It could sometimes also be the feeling of feeling like home, or coming back to home to yourself. So it doesn't always have to be the next big thing.
Yep, totally agree. Okay, so my last question I want to ask, what I think is really cool that you do is you do words of the month. And I noticed on LinkedIn and you wrote your word of the month is curiosity. So what I want to ask you, because in the post you actually wrote, you said you wanted to just challenge yourself to seek out things that you've had little exposure to. You want to ask two questions. I mean, I'm going to ask you two questions, sorry.
Yes.
And I want to ask you, first of all, what have you stopped being curious about? Because that's something that we talked a little about, even like learning new things and continue learning, but just we, all of us, maybe always just are wanting to learn, wanting to try. Let me try mountain climbing. Let me try this. Let me do that. And then we sort of don't do that as much. So is there something that you feel like you've sort of stepped back in? And well, first that, why don't we do that? And then we'll go into my next question of it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, firstly, that's such a good question because, again, curiosity is not something I've just posted about. I try to live by it because I think it's the essence of what makes us human. Um, because if you're not curious, then we'll just pass through life without being conscious. But if I'm being honest, I think I stopped being curious about certain things that seemed out of reach for me. So, for example, I stopped being curious about stillness, about what it means to just be without doing something, without nonstop striving, without go culture. I told myself I already, again, and so that was the part where I totally forgot, like, that I need to figure out what the stillness could look like. So I told myself that, I really have to not try to be productive all the time, and just like try to also enjoy this stillness. So the truth is, like, I was avoiding it. I was avoiding trying to sit with my own thoughts. But I think once I started to do that, it helped me kind of stay curious, and also come up with that idea of maybe I should post about it, and I should like kind of start to do different ventures, because again, stillness is one of the most fertile grounds of curiosity. It helps you think through the things that in general we never have time to think about.
Yep. And so, and really quickly, what are you curious about next? What's the next thing that you want to try? And let's do it
Yes.
personally.
Yeah. So actually, I recently tried out something completely new, which is I actually tried out a Pilates class. And I mean, even though it's a very different way of resilience building and strength building, I I initially wasn't very sure. I signed up for it. I kept postponing every weekend. I would be like, I'll go next weekend. I'll call them. I'll say, can I come next weekend? And then I finally went in. So I think again, I was curious about, how that could impact my health. So after trying one of those classes, I think I've signed up for Pilates this month, so I'm gonna continue trying out it, and kind of learning it, trying to grow in how it works. But yeah, but that was something I was, there was a curiosity, but I kept postponing it. But then when I thought about this stillness, I'm like, what are the things I really need to, I've been curious about, but I'm not pursuing. So I made a list of different things, and Pilates was one of those. And then I think the other piece which I keep thinking about, and maybe it will be the next winter, is skiing. So that's another thing that I wrote down, that I'm very curious about how, or whether I would be able to ski. So next winter, I'm going to try to learn that.
Yeah, no, you've put
Yeah.
perfect areas up New Hampshire. You can nice quick ride, get there and give it a go. Try a bunny slope first, but definitely, I think that's great. And I love that even though, I mean, I think it's important to know that, I mean, you like Pilates and you're going to continue trying it, but if you didn't, it's okay too. It's just curious, try
Exactly.
it, and then either continue doing it or, okay, what's next that you want to try? So I think that's really smart.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing, Lisa, I also have been observing, and maybe you will feel the same way, is with Chat GPT now at our fingertips, it's also making us less curious, because the moment you reflect or think about something, you're like, let me Chat GPT it. So you immediately put it there, and again, Chat GPT is so smart, it'll give you something, and then you're like, okay. So I think that's sort of, again, I wouldn't say killing curiosity, but it's definitely making us less curious, because we have like this powerful tool in our hands that answers everything.
Yep, that is true too. Anyone asks a question, it's like, oh, hold on, let me just double check. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Nishtha, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, same here, Lisa. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, and thank you for watching and always keep coming back. And if you have someone you want me to reach out to, please let me know. And Nishta, I want to make sure to say good luck with your TED Talk.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Have a wonderful day.